for being here. Well, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a couple of people who are in the waiting room, and I will admit those folks as soon as they're able to update their names. We want to make sure that those who are coming in were folks who were given the invite for this call only to ensure our security here. So we'll go ahead and get started, though. You are welcome to keep your video off, or you're welcome to turn it on. Please mind your own mute button, because if I mute you, then you stay muted until I hit a little button that says ask you to unmute. So it's really an extra step in the process. So if I could just trust everybody to do their own muting, that would be much more helpful, and it helps with background noise as well. So thank you for adhering to those features. And secondly, let me just say again, thank you for being here this evening. Believe it or not, we have 15, that's 15 different sessions that are going on concurrently right now. And the question in the chat, is this for the parent meeting? And that is yes, correct. You are here for the parent meeting, and this is for high school folks. So if you have a high school student in your home, you are here in the right place for the Oceanside Unified School District high school meeting. And my name is Jordy Sparks. I'm Director of Student Services with Oceanside Unified. This is my third year here in the district, and I come from the East Coast and the South, Ohio, North Carolina, and Boston. So I'm very happy to be here and grateful for the opportunity to talk with parents this evening, listen to what's on your mind. And that's the purpose of these info sessions. There will be about 15 sessions running each day for the next 3 days. So we're very excited. We're very excited for that. So we'll get started by pulling up a video by our Associate Superintendent, Dr. Mercedes Lovey. And what I would need your help with is, as soon as I start sharing the video, if you can give me a thumbs up by either showing me on your screen or by using the reactions button on the bottom of your screen, that would be very helpful. I just need to know if you can hear the video when I start sharing it. That would be most helpful for me. All right. Thank you all again for being here, and let me pull up my screen.
I'm on a Zoom with your school district with feedback.
So, first of all, can you all see the video okay? That work? Excellent.
No.
Give me another thumbs up if you can hear it.
Hello, my name is Dr. Mercedes Lovey, and I am the Associate Superintendent of Educational Support Services here in Oceanside Unified School District. I'd like to start by thanking you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us here to share your feedback about how we can best serve the needs of our students in the fall. Having been a teacher and principal for over 20 years, I know that the key to a successful school and community is parent involvement. Oceanside Unified School District has been serving students for over 100 years. During that time, we have addressed and met many, many challenges. Now is no different with the COVID-19 challenge. On March 13th, Oceanside Unified School District closed down the physical schools in our district, along with 1,000 other districts in California and most other school districts across the nation. Since then, we have been working to ensure that we have distance learning programs across our country to ensure that our students are both safe and receiving education during this crisis. This has been a very difficult time for our families, our community, our country, and our staff. We have worked to ensure the best outcomes possible and will continue to do so. Since our closure, it has been the dream of the educators to bring back all students onto campus. We want to make sure that when we bring them back, that the safety of our students is ensured. Earlier this week, the news reported that schools would be allowed to reopen if safeguards for physical health were ensured. These requirements for opening schools include a daily symptom check for staff and students, increased cleaning and hand washing, the use of facial coverings for staff and encouraged for students, and also limiting the group size in any particular location. As a district, we have looked at these requirements for ensuring the safety and lowering the risk of sickness among our teams. Over 180 educators have come together to look at the requirements and to find the best way to provide instruction to students. Additionally, we asked the community through a survey what they preferred for their children in the fall. About 50% of the families that responded to our survey said they wanted a full on-campus program. About 35% said they would like a hybrid program with some instruction occurring off campus and some instruction occurring during the distance learning style. And about 15% of our families said that they wanted 100% distance learning. In addition, we had 158 families come to a DPAC meeting to share their ideas. As a result of this feedback, we realized we wanted to have an opportunity to engage with our families in a more personal setting so that we could hear better what your thoughts are. What is clear so far from our data is that there are many different ideas about how we can best meet the needs of our community during this crisis. We all want the best for students. We all want to have our children be safe. How we achieve those goals is different for many families, and we want to make sure that we provide you with choices that meet your unique needs. A lot can change over the next few months before school starts. We must be flexible and understand that we are planning when conditions are constantly changing. Currently, we have several ideas that we are considering that we believe will meet a diverse need in our community. These ideas were developed using our current understanding of the health guidelines and our available resources. All of our plans will include grading, they will include attendance monitoring, and interaction between teachers and students. One model is the 100% distance learning model, which will be very similar to what you've been experiencing over the past 3 months. But with this model, we will also increase and improve our ability to deliver quality instruction through distance and have grades for all students. Another model is our hybrid model. Our hybrid model would have students on campus 2 days a week with 3 days of distance learning. This would allow us to have smaller class sizes of 12 to 18 students in each classroom and allow for teachers to have more individualized time with students when they're face-to-face. In the afternoon, deep cleaning would occur in the classrooms, and teachers would reach out to those students who are working on distance learning. This model allows us to have students back on campus and also follow health guidelines as they stand now in June of 2020. 100% return of students to campus is only possible if the local health orders are addressed to allow for this. We want to have students come back to school 100%, and we also want to ensure their safety and that we can address the health concerns that are in the community at the time. Teachers know that there are many, many ways to meet students. No one way is the best way to meet student needs. We want to provide choices to families to ensure their safety of their children and to make sure that they are comfortable with the programs we offer. We want students back at school, and we want the resources to keep students safe so that we can return students to school while reducing the risk to them. Teachers and principals, staff have always prioritized the safety of students as number one. We will continue to do so as we provide a quality educational opportunity to your children. Now, your facilitators will put you into a group that you will be able to share your ideas. During this time, we ask that you wait to be called on, that you share your ideas, and that we listen with an open mind. We know there are many strong feelings about this topic, and we want to hear from everyone. Thank you again for taking your time to be here, and we appreciate you. Together, we will move forward, and we will have an outstanding outcome for our students. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you to our Associate Superintendent of Educational Support Services, Dr. Levy, for the information and front loading for our conversation this evening. Again, just to reintroduce myself, my name is Jordy Sparks, and I'm Director of Student Services, and I work in the Educational Support Services office on Mission Avenue. So I'm very happy to be here. As you heard Dr. Levy say, we've had a pretty incredible amount of engagement between the staff in Oceanside Unified coming together to work in work groups over the past or the past month or so, with over 180 staff members participating and planning what school could look like in the fall. And then once we had our DPAC meeting and had a pretty overwhelming and awesome response, we decided to open it up more to feedback sessions. At this point, we have probably over 900 respondents who have signed up to participate in these sessions over the next 3 days. We're holding 15 tonight, 15 tomorrow evening, and then several during the day on Friday. And so it shows you that there's definitely a level of engagement that we want to take seriously. And so with that, I just want to say thank you. I know you likely are here because you have questions just like I do, because you have children in the school district. I also have children in Oceanside Unified School District, and knowing what's going on and knowing what next year looks like is important to me as well. So I look forward to hearing from folks tonight. Just a couple of reminders for norms for this meeting. I want to just highlight and introduce my right-hand person, and that is Adrienne Vermillion. You see her name on the screen here. She is my administrative secretary. Thank you, Adrienne, for saying hello. And she will be taking notes feverishly as we listen in on what's on your mind. And whatever notes we don't capture there, we'll capture notes in the chat. Everyone is welcomed and encouraged to speak and share what's on their mind. And the way that you can do that, please, is just to either use the raise hand button, which you can find usually in the right hand corner of your picture box. And if you can't find it there, there is a reaction button down at the bottom of your screen. And if you are giving me either a thumbs up or a clapping hand, I'll know that you're also wanting to share something. Or the third way you can participate is just to use your, turn on your video and raise your hand there, and I'll be sure to call on you. We have enough people that I can see everybody on one screen, so that's helpful in that regard. So with that said, we're going to dive right in, and I look forward to hearing what's on your mind this evening. And the question that really will guide all of our conversation tonight is, what are your thoughts about returning to school in the fall of 2020? The floor is yours.
Jordy, can I talk?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you, Christine.
Our question is, both my husband and I are here. Will there be extracurricular activities offered to our kids if we are in a hybrid model or a complete online model?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question, Christine. One thing I need to make sure I will tell you is that I won't be able to answer all your questions. Well, and take those into account while we're planning, putting forward recommendations to our board as well. So if there are questions I can't answer, I would definitely try. And if not, we are capturing all of them just to be sure. So these can be questions or feedback or thoughts or ideas that you have about what the fall looks like. So thank you, Christine, for starting us off. Yeah, Angelica.
I guess my comment, I definitely understand all of the issues at hand, and there's so much to consider. I heard in the video really talking about the teacher and student interaction. Another piece that's really important to me is having students being able to have some interaction with other students. I think that's really helpful for their social development. And so, I hope that they can get some on campus, activity as much as really is possible. I understand it's a big dilemma, but as much as possible, I would like them to be able to be interacting with their students. The last few months, that's what's so hard, is really just being home, and we all love our families, but it's really important to interact with other people as well.
Thank you, Angelica. Um, I identified with you a little bit there when you said we all love our families. Dot dot dot. Because I have three here, and daycare not being open and school not being open, and two parents working from home. It's been a good test of our relationship. I'll just say all that. It's been interesting. So thank you for your comment. I think I saw a lot of people agreeing with you on that as well. So um, Tiffany Buchanan, I think I saw your hand clap. Either that was for the comment or you had something to share.
I had something to share.
Great.
So we really struggled because we didn't feel that the online my daughter, which is a little bit more academic, very well. She was so I feel if we're going to do a lot more online.
Sorry, Tiffany, you're a little bit muted, or a little bit muffled. I can't hear you that well.
I know I can't hear you very well. Can you hear me better?
That's a little bit
Can
better.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, perfect.
So we really struggled with not enough parent communication with the online structure for a child that's not motivated to work on his own. So I feel if we're going to do work at home in an online structure, the parents really need to be more involved, especially for students that don't really want to do the work at home. I felt that he was much more structured in the classroom. My daughter was very fine to do it on her own, but my son is not. And so I think the parents really need to be involved in any kind of online communication to make sure that we can keep them on track, because I know he's not going to do it on his own.
Thank you, Tiffany. And so it sounds like if communication was a challenge during this time between
Very,
school and home.
Very much so.
Okay.
We really had to reach out to the teachers, really ask what the assignments were, what he should be doing, and really enforce that he was getting it done. I know it's kind of a parental thing, but we really had to stay on top of every assignment to make sure it was getting in and getting turned in.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that feedback. Angelica, you wanted to add on to that?
Yeah, just kind of related to that, I would share a little similar experience. I realized that come the fall, it was stated that grades would be included. I think that the way it was structured, if some had already, say, received credit, it was hard for them to be motivated. I understand it was so abrupt, and so there was a lot of emotions involved. It was really shocking for, I think, many families. I struggled with knowing how much to push my kids, how much not to put, kind of back off. And so that will be for sure. I think having some online connection, having some on campus connection makes them a little more accountable perhaps to their teachers because they're seeing them regularly. Some classes offered Zoom, some classes didn't. I know, I think that will need to be structured a little bit, and really having clear understanding of what is required and expectations kind of.
Thank you for that. Yeah, definitely a pretty regular response we've heard throughout has been more consistency in platforms, more consistency in communication, and obviously like clearer guidelines as to what distance learning would look like if we exercise that model in the fall. So I've heard that as a through line in a lot of our conversations with parents. So thank you for bringing that back. Amy, I saw that you raised your hand a second ago.
I did, but you answered the question with regards to the consistency in the platform. So, there's a dog. Both of my children were at King last year, and one will be at El Camino this year, and the other one will be at King. But depending upon their teacher, some of them used, Google Classroom. Some were pushing things out through Seesaw. Some were utilizing the Guardian notification portal in Google Classroom and some wasn't. So I think just having some consistency with that will be more supportive of parents for sure.
Great point.
But it sounds like you have a plan for that. So
yeah, well, and part of that plan is getting feedback from parents as well as to what worked best in terms of communication. Because even age-wise, some platforms work a little bit better to communicate with families than others. So if you have feedback or thoughts or suggestions around helpful platforms or easier platforms for you to use as a parent communicating with the school, those would be helpful to know about as well. Mr. Madison, you had something to add?
Yeah. First, I just want to say thanks. I mean, this is awesome. It's great that the district is doing this. There's been a lot of current controversy through a number of districts in San Diego County that are building their plans with very little parent involvement. There was an article this morning in the Union Tribune that went through that, and it's awesome to see. I sat through the San Diego Unified meeting yesterday as well as San Marcos last night just to see what they were doing. And one of the concerns seems to be if you go with a hybrid model where you've got a combination of kids in class versus online learning, expecting the same teacher to be shifting gears back and forth and to be able to handle that. And then the budgetary issues with doing that seems to be a big concern. San Diego Unified didn't even think they could afford to do that, much less. So, I mean, I guess I've asked this question before, though, but if they do go with that model, if say 53% of the parents want to go with in-person learning, is there some reason why we can't just partner with some company that does online learning as their core competency, like Pacific View in our area, and just facilitate some connection with parents who want to do the full distance learning, who don't feel comfortable sending their kids back to go through that, and then let our teachers do what they do best, teach in the class?
Yeah, I appreciate the suggestion. I've been following along with the local districts as well. The one thing I'll mention, and I see that Jake has a question in the chat too, so I'll get to that. I'm going to drop a link in the chat here, and that link is to a press release about our newly revamped hybrid model school that exists over on the Ditmar campus, which has now been renamed and adopted as the Surfside Educational Academy. So they are now the Surfside Sharks, and it is a TK through 12 program. And one of the components that they do offer is a full 100% distance learning model. So very similar to what a Pacific View would offer or another program. And that has been slowly building over the years, and it's a model that is available to our families. It's not one that is advertised as widely as it probably should have been, previously. But I think now there's more of a need and more of a desire to have something like that parents can tap into and still be part of the OUSD family. So that is an option. I invite you to take a look at the press release that I put into the chat, and that takes you to the actual website and shows you some of the programs that are available at that site as well.
Surfside sounds great. It's awesome, but would it have the capacity? I mean, could they possibly do that without having all the other teachers involved?
Yeah, that's still a question to be answered for sure.
Yeah.
I want to get to Jake's question. Jake said, my question on a hybrid method, would kids from the same family in different grades have the same on-campus days? Great question. So I can say that the plan that we are developing now is taking into consideration having students on campus by alpha, meaning by alpha by last name. Now, we also recognize that there are sometimes family and students in the same family who do not have the same last name. And so that would have to be addressed on a case by case basis. But our intention is to do, Jake, what you are suggesting here, asking about here, is to be able to keep families together on the same day, so as to not cause additional inconvenience to a family. Christine asked, have you thought about another teaching platform? For example, I use Adobe Connect, which is very powerful in presenting online teaching. Yeah, Christine, right now we're considering a number of them. The interesting thing was that the past, several months from March until now has given us the opportunity to almost experiment with all the different platforms that are out there. And so we've gotten really great feedback from our teachers and our staff, and now it's coming from our parents as well around what has worked best for each grade level, and each community. And so definitely things that we're taking into consideration. And we have an entire instructional technology team who is considering what methods can be used as well. So thank you for those questions. Robin says, how are you planning on accounting for COVID slip? Will there be extra help to help students get caught up on the items that were missed this semester? Yeah, that's a real concern. I think it's a real and valid concern. The one thing I tell myself on a regular basis, having been a elementary and middle school teacher and elementary middle school principal, is that one of the things that teachers are best at is catching students up, and they do that every year when we start in the fall. We recognize that there's definitely going to be an additional challenge or a layered challenge in the fall. And so that is something that we have to plan for, whether that means that we get additional remediation time. We have more platforms that allow for remediation. It's something that we're going to have to plan for sure. So that's definitely on our mind. And thank you for bringing that up. How's the district supporting students without internet access other than paperwork packets? Yeah, you guys are bringing it tonight. This is good. Okay, so we distributed just under 6,000 devices over a 2.5 week period, pre-K through 12. But as you can imagine and as you understand, that still does not mean that everyone has access. And so it's something that we have brought up as a top priority for our district moving forward, especially if we're going to have a version of distance learning and online. We've considered looking at hotspots, and we've also considered looking at funds through donors and other means to where we could actually support families in accessing internet at a low cost. A lot of our local companies have done great with offering low cost options, but there are some caveats with those as well. A lot of times, meaning that sometimes a parent cannot access that service if they have an outstanding bill or something like that, and so they're still at a disadvantage. So again, another thing that's at the top of our mind when we're planning for any type of distance learning. Other questions? Can service be installed on the Chromebooks? Not that I know of, but that if anybody knows of a way to do that or has seen that happen, I'd be interested to hear more about that. You would think though, right? Like you would think it'd be a little bit easier to get internet access this day and age.
I know
we
iPads
definitely
do it. iPads. So I would wonder.
Like a hotspot almost on the it's interesting because we did work this year. Our goal from school closure to just last week was to make sure that we have 17,635 students in our district, and our goal was by the beginning of April, we were asking the question, like, are there students out there who we haven't contacted? We haven't heard from them. They haven't heard. Their teacher hasn't heard from them. We've reached out and not heard back. And we started digging into that a little bit, and we found that there were about 2,300 students district-wide who we had not heard from since school closures. Now, mind you, we didn't formally start distance learning until April 20th, but we were asking this question beforehand just because we felt like when we do launch into distance learning, what does that actually look like if we can't connect with kids? And so our assistant principals led this charge at each site, and they worked hand in hand with teachers who were checking in with their students on a daily basis. And I'm happy to say that over the course of about 4 to 5 weeks, we were able to contact all but 12 of our students across the district, and at least be in contact with them. And we were able to get those devices out in their hands. But time and time again, what we found was the students who weren't connecting were students who had issues with internet access. And so it's definitely an inequity that we have to address in our community for sure. Amy asked about counseling services be more extensively offered. Um, yes, they will. We don't know yet what that will look like, but we do know that all of our counselors now know how to both deliver services in person and virtually. Counseling services continue through the pandemic, and we'll continue that into the next school year. We did add counselors to the sites this year. We plan on finding ways to continue to bring additional counseling services, whether it be through our folks or contracting with other partners too. What other questions do you all have out there, or thoughts about what's on your mind about school returning um, in the fall of 2020? Sure, Amy.
I know a lot of these or answers to these are driven by the recommendations that the health department makes, but um, what if a parent doesn't want to have their child in a mask and they come to school? Is there going to be a way to say, you know, we're going to offer you, if that's not a choice that you're wanting to make for your child, you know, we can offer you, you know, the online platform, or is there some kind of plan in place for how that might look?
Yeah, that's a great question. That has to be part of our plan. Kids coming to school is compulsory in California, and so if it's compulsory and we're asking students to do certain things like wear a mask, that also becomes compulsory if it's a health order or a guideline. But we also have to be mindful of other options that we can provide to families and offer to families in the event that they're not comfortable with their child doing that. We'll always adhere to the most current and updated um, county health guidelines, county health orders, and directions from CDE. And we have a team of 8 nurses who I work directly with, who guide us through all of the current recommendations and updates. And so we'll continue to adhere to those, but definitely we'll have to be mindful about what's required and not required of students as we return in the fall. Christine asked about required testing and are there differences in recommendations and requirements? I'm going to come back to those 2 questions in a second. I saw that Laura had a hand up.
You kind of answered it because I worry a little bit about our teachers and the amount of students they're seeing each day at the middle school and high school, especially if kids are coming and going in and out of classrooms. How you're, keeping kids in masks and protecting our teachers as well as our students, especially because many of them are at higher risk than our students would be. That was my one question. And then I was also curious, would it be possible for like students who don't have internet access, or maybe even students with higher needs like SPED or EL, to have access to like workspaces on campus where maybe there's someone they're kind of overseeing at distance, like a workspace, so they have access to internet, and then if they have questions or need help accessing the curriculum that's being put out for the distance piece of a hybrid model, if that might be a possibility.
Great question and great suggestion. I appreciate that. There was a question about required testing. We don't know the answer to that yet. A lot of those requirements were waived this year. We don't know if that will continue next year. And then Angelica, you had a question about recommendations versus requirements. Do you want to say some more about that?
I also work at a small school that is dealing with early childhood, and I know in some of the wording of things, things are recommended, and it also says to the best of your ability. So I know there can be, there can be requirements, and there can be this is what's recommended, but it may not. I don't know. That was just kind of my question. To the best of your ability, sometimes there can be a little leeway, but this is what we're asking. I don't know. Just kind of along those lines.
Yep. It's a great question. And I think, if you've been following any of the, other local school district board meetings, there's a lot of nuance in that language between shall and may and what's required versus what's recommended. And, some districts are taking liberty with some of that language too. And so the one thing that we think about is our number one priority always is safety of students and safety of staff, and so we're going to have to open in a way that at all points prioritizes that. And so when things are recommended versus required, we still have to ask the question of, what's the strongest recommendation that's out there in order to keep all of our students and staff safe. But definitely something that we are considering as we're making our plans for sure. Christine asked, what about tutoring? Can we try to connect students like the NHS Kids Plus teacher tutors provide volunteer opportunities for tutoring kids? Yeah, I think that's one of the things we'll have to consider next year, especially with the question that was brought up earlier about the slip happening with time being out of school. Our aim is to, in every way possible, in inflexible ways, to keep the same services that we're providing to students now. I think one of the things I've been most amazed by is how adaptable and flexible our teachers and our partners and our staff have been through all of this, and being able to deliver as best of a education they can. So we will be continuing to find ways to address the gaps that we see. But I do like the idea of additional tutoring as well. Todd, I think, did you have a question? And Amy, I think I saw you raise your hand as well.
Yeah, on the shall versus may thing, I would swear that I saw something in the guidelines for reopening that said they were requiring teachers to wear masks, but students were optional. So I think it's a choice that the district can make, I believe, in that. I don't know which way they want to make that. But actually, a question, just this is kind of an inside baseball thing, but is the district negotiating with the union at this point in MOU so that they can do something with the work rules? Because I don't know if the normal work rules support some of these models.
No, not that I'm aware of. There are no negotiations right now. No.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. What else? Other questions? Other thoughts about returning to school in the fall of 2020? Christine asked about what's training look like for teachers to provide distance learning. It's quite a new skill. That's one of the things that we're developing, is what would training look like. There's been a lot of conversation in our work groups that we've had internally around using some of the first days back in August to do more onboarding and training of teachers, but also do some more learning opportunities for students and parents as well, who have to get used to using these new platforms or using the same platforms in a different way. So we will be building in professional learning for teachers. I don't know what that looks like yet. And I know extracurricular activities were addressed, but what about sports? Such an important part of high school. Yeah, we don't know about sports yet. It's still one of those big question marks. Some of that is done, at a different level as far as high school sports go. Like, they have a whole other, I don't know what you would call it, like a whole other board that looks at sports across the county. But that's still, no decisions have been made in that regard yet. But I know that that's a huge part of the student experience in high school. It probably was for a lot of you all here. I know it was for me. And so it's hard to imagine high school without those opportunities. How's the district supporting our Spanish-speaking members of the community to support? Maybe, can you tell me some more about what you mean by that question, Amy? I mean, I can tell you that the same meetings that we're having now, we're having them concurrently in Spanish as well. So we have quite a few Spanish-speaking families who are participating the next 3 days. But is there something else that you're thinking of?
I just know I work in Fallbrook. So in our district, we have a large migrant ed population. So like their one access point is gone during the day because mom or dad goes to work at the field, and that's how they access. So then they don't get home till 5 or 6, and then that's when the students are able to pop on. So is migrant ed supporting it? Are there groups that are helping to support those students to just keep them in the loop and help parents feel like they're in the loop with that in the same way that we're engaging, you know. I mean, like I can pop onto Zoom really easily. Not everybody's able to do that.
Yeah. It's a great question. We do have some additional support. One is that we're running Migrant Ed Summer School. We have just under 100 students who are signed up for that. And we've been distributing devices and making sure all the summer school students have those devices for summer school. We also have a team of school community advisors where there is one at each school who is essentially a liaison for a lot of our Spanish speaking families. And they were critical in helping us contact and connect with all families during school closure. And then we've also had recently our district interpreter and translator who was supporting in educational support services. She's moved over to a role in the communications department to take on more of an outward facing role. And so we're looking at launching not only our district webpage and district social media in English, but also the same version in Spanish as well. So we're trying to find more ways to connect with our Spanish speaking families in our community for sure. This is a great question, Christine. How are teachers feeling about next year? I'm very reticent to speak on behalf of all teachers. So if there happen to be teachers on this call and you want to weigh in, I would love to hear from you. I see a couple jumping in, and I can share with you what I have observed and heard as well. Yeah, Melanie.
Well, just like all the parents, and I'm also a parent, we're just very anxious to know what model we're going to pursue so we can start preparing now. I don't want to wait till those first 2 days in August. I feel like we're all on board right now figuring out the plan. And obviously our number one priority would be to be with the children, but in a safe manner. So I am leaning towards the hybrid model where it would be no more than 12 kids at a time in the classroom, but I feel like we do need to have that personal touch with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Angelica?
I just remembered a comment one of my sons said when I kind of said that the school's still struggling with knowing what next year's going to look like, and it may be that there's going to be more distance learning. And what he said could be helpful is really having more of a schedule and a plan. Like, this is when you, like you do at school, this is your time frame for this class, this is your time frame for that class. Now, I know that can be hard for people that maybe, I know that can be hard, especially she was talking about some people maybe don't have access till parents get home, but he was saying that would be helpful for him. I think regular scheduled Zoom classes or regular, just because it's hard, I think, for students to really monitor and schedule that, and time management and all that stuff can be really challenging for them on their own. So giving more structure would be helpful. He actually had one class where they were doing Zoom meetings at the same time, 2 different classes, and that was kind of hard. He picked the one he felt like he needed to be a part of more, and he could do the other one on his own. But that's just, that was kind of his feedback.
Thank you. So my children are all elementary and younger. So you all mean to tell me that they still need structure even in high school as well? I have to continue to look forward to the structure, and they don't do it themselves. Come on.
That's true.
Oh, jeez. That was disappointing to hear, but that's okay. We'll get there. No, I think it's a great point, Angelica, and thank you as well, Melanie, for weighing in. I think very similar to our parent surveys that we sent out, there is a mixed response from our teachers. If you look in the comment section of what they were surveyed about, they're all going to tell you that they want to be back with their kids, that they want some sort of normalcy, that they want to make sure that their kids are okay in person, and that they want to get back to routines. But then you also have quite a few who really are concerned, whether it's because of their own personal health and safety, or loved ones that they're living with or caring for, or just colleagues that they work with. People are still concerned about the health and safety of those as well. And so it definitely is a mixed response. And I think any teacher is dealing with an added level of responsibility over the past couple of months and taking on the additional step of distance learning so quickly and learning in a lot of new ways what that's like. So I think people are tired. I think they absolutely deserve a summer break and a chance to exhale and breathe and reflect. And I also know that they have been great at giving feedback. So, in addition to the 180 folks that we have participate in kind of planning groups, this week we're also running teacher feedback groups where we have 4 groups participating across the district where teachers are coming back and saying the question is very similar to what we're asking you all, and that is, how did it go, and what do you think about the fall? And they've been really gracious in giving really specific and targeted feedback around that as well. So we have really, really great folks in our district. So a couple of questions were asked in the chat. If I can get back to those. Robin asked, when will the decisions be finalized and communicated? The plan right now is to send recommendations to the Board of Education for the June 23rd board meeting. So that would probably be a board meeting, if you're able to, that you'd want to tune into, because they'll have recommendations at that point that they'll be considering and likely making a decision on. Is there a way to help students create small groups who help each other? My son feels so isolated and was starting to create a friend group as a freshman, just starting grade. Yeah. I think I almost think of it as a lot of graduate school programs kind of run things in cohorts where you have a whole class, but you also have many cohorts of folks too who do work and projects together. It's a great suggestion. How will students be grouped at the high school based on return? Will kids more teachers? Amy, can you say more about that? I don't think I'm reading it correctly.
Yeah, I had a typo. So with, when you think of like family units at the elementary school, that's easy. It's a class of, 20 to 30, depending on what you're teaching. And you have less contact, but at a high school, you have a lot of contact. So are we thinking kind of like kids are going to be in groups and teachers are going to move and they're going to be kind of like in villages? Or are they thinking kids are just going to move and we're going to hope they stay apart from each other? Like, I was wondering kind of what the thoughts were on that, or if you're still in the planning stage for that.
I think we're still in the planning stage, but I'd be interested to hear what folks think here. What do you feel like would be? I mean, it sounds like you're asking, do the kids rotate classes or do the teachers rotate? Is that kind of what you're asking, Amy?
Well, I mean, that gets into a whole nother thing. Then you end up kind of tracking kids if you keep them in the same group. But I mean, when you think of, I'm thinking of Jack and Elliot King last year, and there's like almost 2,000 kids there, and they're in 7 or 8 classes. And granted, their ELA class is the same group of kids, but the amount of contact that they're making, how can you stay 6 feet apart? How can you, and the teacher is having interaction with between 150, well, depending on their contract, between 150 and 200 kids. PE classes are huge. So, I mean, and I know it's all dependent upon how we return, but, how do we mitigate that a little bit? Or how do we, and I know like a master schedule is a crazy, scary thing, but like, how do you do that?
Yeah. It's a great question. And I saw one of the responses in the district in the chat was, it sounds a bit like a scheduling nightmare. Yeah, I think that is going to be an ongoing challenge for us. And, even the first iteration or the first couple of iterations might not be the best as we start out and figure it out. The goal is to have, when students are on campus in person and staff is on campus in person, the goal is to have essentially 50% of who would traditionally and regularly be there. And so that does create its own obstacles as well. So thank you for the thoughts on that? Christine shared that one idea was our kids went to parochial school. They created families, which had one student from each grade level. The olders helped the youngers. Yeah, we are considering as one of the models what it would look like to have what's called an advisory or homeroom at the secondary level, which would allow a group of students to kind of a teacher be responsible for like one kind of cohort or group of students. That way, that it could be more intentional check-ins or be opportunities for more social emotional support, especially as students are coming back from such a crazy transition. We recognize that some students will have experienced some sort of trauma during this whole time, and we'll have to have ways to address that and create spaces in our classroom where students feel safe and checked in with. And so there are ideas like what Christine suggested here that we are considering as well. So thank you for the suggestion. It's something that we can add to what we're considering. So if you haven't contributed yet, you still have some questions or thoughts or ideas around fall of 2020, we are still here for you. We got a little bit more time. We got about 30 minutes. And of course, if anybody needs to take off at any point, you are more than free to do so. Laura said, where can we find the link to the board meeting on June 23rd? I can try to find that for you. I'm not sure if it's available yet, though. Generally, it gets sent out about a week ahead of time, which I guess would be today. Let me try and find it as we're continuing to discuss here. Will there still be science PE classes where electives be affected? Really good questions. I think to an extent, the answer to those questions are yes, we'll have them, and yes, they will be affected in a certain way. It's like, can you have things like choir or chorus where there's a lot of respirating in the air, students who are close to each other, like things that I think will have to be considered. Thank you, Todd, for putting that in the chat. Mr. Madison dropped in the chat that it'll be posted here in about 3 days. The agenda will be available for the board meeting. Carlos, is the district considering to support 100% distance learning and 100% on-campus learning? This way, the percentage of on-campus students will decrease. We're considering both. Yes, we're considering both to have options available, both options available to families. We just can't do the 100% on-campus learning yet. That would have to be phased in, as restrictions loosen. So that is something that we want to do eventually. We just cannot do yet. That might have been a confusing answer to the question, but we'll see. Angelica.
Yeah, I guess based on that, was thinking if we start, say, with a hybrid model, and as restrictions loosen or things become, that it then makes it we can shift to 100% on campus. Would we? I'm hearing that the idea would be yes, if we, as soon as we can get to the back to 100%, that's the hope. But
yeah, that is the aim. Yeah. So thank you for clarifying. That's the aim. That's where we want to be. That's where if the health orders and the safety guidelines allow us to do that, that's what we want to do. And we will be finding ways to, bring hybrid models until they really become a 100% in-person model and still be able to offer 100% distance learning for families who want it. I think the reason we planned backwards from a full 100% distance learning was because we also recognize that at a moment's notice, we may have to be prepared to close a school or a number of schools and go to full distance learning if there's some sort of outbreak or uptick. And so we wanted to be prepared to do both, to where we could, quote unquote, turn on a switch if we have to close schools one day. So we want to be prepared for that. But the goal has always been to get back to full 100% on-campus learning. And we also recognize that we should also be offering parents distance learning opportunities as well, should they want those. And again, we have done that. We've offered that through what once was Ditmar Academy and Claire Bergener, and now is Surfside Educational Academy. And that offering is still there, that you can participate in 100% distance learning. And I see someone in the call who's connected very closely to that. So if that person wants to say anything, I don't want to put you on the spot, make you put your teacher hat on, but at any point, if you want to, the floor is yours. Let's see. Will contact sports be eliminated? I do not know. Is there a chance that different schools would have different approaches? One school goes all on campus, one school is hybrid. I don't know yet, but that's a suggestion that we can put forward as part of our recommendations as well. How far away is the district from one-to-one devices? Good question. We had a plan that was approved earlier this year to be one-to-one over a course of 3 years, and we have tried desperately to accelerate that. What I do know is that after distributing 6,000 devices from March to essentially mid-March to mid-April, there were not any additional requests coming in from parents around devices. We still had some available, and so it didn't seem like there was a lack of devices. The challenge was still connectivity. And so the next thing that we're doing though is we are trying to refresh our devices and trade in a lot of the older ones to get newer ones. And the way that we approach it this time around was a lot of our younger students were able to get iPads and some Chromebooks, and most of our older students were able to get Chromebooks. I wonder as a percentage how many high school kids actually participated in the distance learning. I had to be on my son daily to get him motivated. Most of his friends only did work in AP classes and skipped all the other work. So what I can share is, and we had this conversation in the DPAC meeting. We had the conversation around engagement, basically like what does engagement look like and how do you measure that? And so the numbers that I share was the part of the work that we did when we were trying to find every single student in the district and contact them. We also had teachers report weekly on, did your student in your class engage in learning this week? Did they participate in a Zoom call? Did they turn in work? Did you hear from them? Are they doing work alongside the class? And our numbers pre-K through 12, we were consistently at anywhere between 85 to 87% of our students each week were what teachers considered engaged, right? Now, I still think that we have a lot of work to do in the fall to determine what engagement actually looks like, because we didn't put any metrics around it yet. We didn't put any parameters around it yet. So that still needs to happen. But I think, we saw some silver lining and some bright spots in some of the engagement where more students than what we were assuming right away were participating on at least a weekly basis. That doesn't mean daily. And so it's something that we have to still consider for next year. Do teachers have updated devices too? Not yet. They do not. Cool. Thank you for the other suggestions in the chat as well. Tiffany, did you have a question?
I felt that was a little high number. I felt the engagement was actually probably a lot lower. Especially in high school, I felt a lot of the students, at least when I was talking to my daughter and my son, a lot of them saw their grades and they checked out. Mm-hmm. So I think your engagement was probably very high in your grade schools and your middle schools, but I didn't see it. I mean, I think they concentrated on the classes that their grades were low in, and they ignored the grades that were up. Yeah. So, and I wanted to go back and say definitely the structure again, and having the kids have, if they're going to be at home doing online courses, they need to know what time that class is, so we don't have competing classroom Zooms at the same time. That was definitely a problem. Yeah. And they just definitely need a schedule at home.
Thank you for that, Tiffany. Amy.
Was there like a minimum number of contacts that the teachers were asked to make per student, or was there a way they were tracking it?
As far as contacts, the bare minimum was we have to make sure that you've heard from this student, right? Like we want to know that they're accounted for. We want to know that whether or not they are planning on returning in the fall. We want to know that they're okay. And then the weekly engagement really revolved around, have you heard from this student this week? Have they engaged? Have they submitted assignments? Have they participated in a Zoom call? And again, that could really mean that they only did it 1 or 2 times a whole week. Doesn't mean that they were doing it each day. Now that would have to look very different in the fall. And our teachers have given us great feedback on what that could look like moving forward for sure. So, a lot of our schools, staff, school community advisors, assistant principals, counselors, some of our student services team. We were actually out doing home visits during all of this, with all of our protective gear on and social distancing and all that, just to make sure that, like, hey, we haven't heard from you since March. We want to make sure that you're okay and that you can connect with your teacher online. What do you need? Do you need a device? Does your family need support in some other way? And so that was some of the approach that our schools took as well.
Did you see a difference between the elementary versus the middle versus the high school with regards to that?
Our highest level of weekly engagement existed between the grades of 4th and 8th grade. You probably are not surprised to know that our lowest engagement were our seniors. There's a little bit of senioritis mixed in with that and some other things too. But yeah, definitely the highest that we saw was between grades 4 and 8. And I think a lot of that just has, like they're a little bit more able to manage and get on and participate by themselves and not have as much adult supervision. And some of the assignments I think were a little bit more accessible for them as well. So definitely good learning for us to see that data this year.
Well, it's great to hear that you guys are out in the community making contact with the kids that have kind of gone dark. So that's fantastic to hear.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? Risa, do you want to share what you've been cooking this whole time? Because it looks really good, whatever it is.
I just wanted to
thank you for doing this for us.
For sure.
I just wanted to reiterate the thanks to the district for this. I think this is a great example of parent involvement. I want to thank all the parents who showed up for this. I think we should all keep it up. Appreciate the district involvement in this. And this is like the new Oceanside Unified here. We're all together on this and we need to make it happen. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. If there aren't any more questions, folks are free to leave. And, again, I want to reiterate my thanks to you for doing this in an evening and, giving us your time for this hour and a half. Some of you probably participated in the DPAC meeting as well. And so it's great to see this engagement and, just, again, be mindful of the fact that there are 15 other sessions where people are doing the same thing and participating tonight. And, this will continue throughout the week. And so it's been rewarding for us to see our parents engage and give voice to this. And just know that we want most likely what our parents are asking for too, and that is for us to be back in school and learning. And we just have to make sure we have the right resources and the right safety guidelines and we're doing all those things to keep our staff and our students healthy and safe. And so that's really our priority. So I'll hang around for a few minutes if anybody else has any questions, but in the meantime, you're free to take off and go enjoy whatever you've been cooking this whole time. And yeah, thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate it.
I had another question. Yeah. Let me find it again. Oh, I was curious how, if any, how much Oceanside is maybe collaborating or checking in with other districts in the area to find out what they're doing. Just curious about that. You know, are we reaching out and finding out what other districts are, where they're at in their planning and their thoughts, and aligning if possible.
Yeah, we are, and that's a lot of the work that our superintendent and our executive cabinet does. They interact almost daily with the other superintendents and associate superintendents to talk through planning, and the goal really is to try to get some consistency in messaging and programming throughout the county, rather than just kind of be like different spots here and there. So yeah, we're definitely collaborating with other school districts. We've definitely been paying attention to what Carlsbad's doing, San Marcos, San Diego Unified, and you know, sometimes it's like it's nice to see them go out in front and maybe step in something, and then we're like, okay, well, we don't want to do that. But other times we learn from some of their leadership as well. So
yeah, I know that some, you know, I definitely think that people for sure compare with other districts because you may have friends in different areas or whatever. And I know that different districts have different needs and have different, you know, concerns, but it's good to hear that there is, you know, some collaborating and
yeah,
connecting.
Thank you for that recommendation too. Any other questions? I'm going to save the chat in about a minute. So if you have any other questions, drop them in there. Adrian, thank you so much for taking notes this evening.
You're welcome.
Okay.
There was a question in the chat about getting the form for a work permit.
Yep. Yeah, I sent Carlos. I dropped it in the chat my email address. So the counselors are off for the summer, but if you reach out to me, I can work with the administration at the school to get what you need. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great evening. Adrian, if you'll stay for just a minute and we'll make sure we get all the notes together.